And welcome everybody to It's Sweet Tea Time. My name is Regina Stiles. I am your host today. We are sorry that Randy couldn't make it here with us today because he finally got called back into work. So I'm going to be doing this lovely interview here all by my lonesome. Before we get started and before we get going on our interview today with our very special guest, I want to do a couple of what do we call advertisements for things that are going to be coming up. I'm going to go ahead and pop some things up on the screen and show you what's going on. Coming up tonight after this, around 7 o'clock tonight, is a digital benefit show called Black Drag Magic, hosted by Amber St. James and Strawberry Corn Cake, with a bunch of different African-American entertainers from our community that are going to be raising money for something special today. So we hope you guys can catch that. It'll be live here on Facebook, once again, hosted by Amber St. James and Strawberry Corn Cakes. Also coming up, we have, coming up on July the 11th, you are all invited to join the Imperial Court de San Diego for their investiture, which will be happening right here live on Facebook. It will be pre-show at 6:30, hosted by America's Got Talent Season 2's Granny Pearl. And then our actual investiture will be hosted by Emperor 47 Darnell of Wakanda. We will also be having the appointing of our new appointed Prince and Princess Royales, as you can see on the flyer. If you haven't gotten any information, you can go to the Imperial Court San Diego's Facebook and get all the information you can. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to bring on our special guest of our show today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, all the way from Surrey, BC, community activist and Emperor 1, 7, and 15 of Surrey, BC. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. Martin Rooney. Hey, hey, hey. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm great. It's a nice sunny day here in San Diego. What's the weather like?
Good to see you. Thanks. Cloudy and humid and probably in the late 60s. It's not a pretty day today.
Oh, well.
At least it's not raining.
Right? So we're going to go ahead First off, I want to say thank you for joining us. And,
thank you very much for the invitation. I've watched some of your shows and I found you to be a fabulous interviewer.
Well, thank you very much. You are actually my first guest from Canada.
Yay.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? Why don't we start off by you telling me where you were born and raised?
I was born and raised in Dublin, Ireland, and we lived just 5 miles out of the city till I was 17 years of age. I was born the first of 5 children in 1960.
1960. Now, what was it like in 1960 in Ireland?
Well, I don't remember what it was like in 1960 because I was just born, but it was, at the times where we were building up to there was the North and South issue, which was brewing when I was born, and I was born into a Catholic family, so all of that Catholic guilt was built into my life. So back in the 60s, it was black and white television, and you were lucky to have a TV. We had a phone that was almost like a party line. It only had 6 digits at the time, and we lived in a cul-de-sac community, being the last house in the cul-de-sac, overlooking a park and overlooking a convent of all things.
Oh no! So What was it like being the oldest of 5 kids?
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't realize it until probably when I was born, and a year, 9 months later, my brother was born. And then there was a 10-year gap, 1960, 61, then 68, 69, and 71. So when the girls all came into play, I was old enough to learn how to be diapers, and being the oldest, it was a responsibility. Plus, I was also born, I didn't know this at the time, but I had to have open heart surgery by the time I was 11 so that it didn't interfere with puberty. So I was raised to be combative, if that's not the correct word, and raised to be the leader. And I'm assuming that they were hoping that I would be a priest, a cardinal, or the pope. I'm just saying.
Right? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no kidding.
Would you think about yourself and think that you were an effeminate young child?
I wouldn't say that. I struggled with. I think I knew at an early age that I wasn't into the macho thing for me. I did try to play football. I did try to play soccer. Football, I mean Gaelic Irish football. I did try to play soccer, but at 4 years of age, I was put into Irish dance school. So right there and right then, I guess, was the definition of being gay in my life.
Now, you let me get this straight. You were bullied as a kid growing up because you didn't play sports and because you were an Irish dancer?
That's correct. Health-wise, I couldn't play sports. And the very year that I actually qualified to go on school football team, I was told by my parents, you can't do that because you're going to have heart surgery in the next 6 months and we can't afford to have you injured. So when I was 4, back in those days, boys doing Irish dancing wore kilts, which was nothing, like it was nothing to me in any way, shape, or form to have to wear the kilt. But as I grew older, and as I went into high school, it became a very much a bullying thing for me because, why would you want to wear a girl skirt and why are you doing Irish dancing and all of that sort of stuff? So from that perspective, fag, queer, all of that stuff was coming out of kids my own age, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Now, did you enjoy the Irish dancing? Did you want to play sports, or was Irish dancing something more that you wanted to do?
Well, it was what I knew. I wanted to play sports so I could fit in and be macho or whatever. It was not that I'm macho at 60 either. But I enjoyed Irish dancing because I was winning medals. I was winning contests. And I always love a challenge, and particularly with Irish dancing, when you got into the hard dance, as in like the river dance type dancing, there's a technique behind that you have to extremely practice to rehearse that. So when you're good at that and you're winning medals in competitions at that, then that becomes fulfilling enough. And then I don't know that you know this because I don't think it's in my bio. At 7 years of age, we were introduced to sailing. So from that perspective, I had 2 things, Irish dancing and sailing, which were both passionate to me because they were both competitive.
Okay. So when do you think that you discovered that you liked other boys?
I don't know that it was a discovery. I think it was just automatic. My struggle was to not admit that to myself because my Catholic guilt wouldn't allow me to, right?
Right.
And when you're raised in a Catholic family that is strictly Catholic, I mean, I joked with somebody last week, you go to confession on a Friday, you go to confession the next Friday. How many sins can you commit between one Friday and another? And so we go to confession on Fridays and then make up sins for the sake of revealing them, right?
Right.
So I don't think the crisis occurred for me until my mother found a letter in my bedroom when I was 22, and I had no control out. I like control of telling my story. That I lost control of.
So would you say that you being gay was basically like kept in the closet until you were 22, or were you out to everyone else but your family?
I came out to my late godmother, who was also my aunt and my father's sister, when the crisis was obviously coming down at home, and my grandmother, I think, ultimately knew, because I had a very close relationship with my paternal grandmother, and I think most people know in their family, whether they be gay or lesbian, son or daughter, and I can only speak to both of those identities. And then you've got a whole Catholic background on you with all of the guilt. You can't have sex, you can't masturbate, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so I think my crisis came when I had to stand up and defend myself.
Now, would you say that you had to fight with anyone, physically fight because of your sexuality in your family or at school?
No. I was always taught not to fight. And you have to remember, going back to the heart thing, I was always advised not to be in conflict, and I was always taught not to be conflicting. In the generation and the historical content I was brought up in, you always, sticks and stones will break my bones and names will never hurt me. Exactly. So that was the attitude we had to handle. You know what I'm saying? So there was never the physical thing. Now, somebody came at me, better believe it, but I never instigated a fight.
Right. So you said it.
I go watch them on the hill on the way home. Go ahead.
So you said at 22, your mom found this letter that must have expressed about your homosexuality. What did you do in the instance after she found that letter?
Well, I was sitting at work, minding my own business. I was dating a straight married man at the time, who had given me his wedding ring. I had spent time, yeah, no kidding. I had spent time at his house with his wife and kids having dinner. So I wrote a letter to him and explaining how much in love I thought I was with him. And anyway, I left it at home, buried under something on my desk in my bedroom. And all of a sudden, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the phone rings at work, and it's a very distressed mother who's very angry. You need to come home now. Okay, why? I have something serious I need to talk to you about. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? So I end up going home. I get home, and I say, so what's up, Mom? Go to your room till your father comes home. Okay, I'm 21, and you're telling me 22. You're telling me to go to my room till my father comes home. What the hell's... Anyway, so it broke. All hell broke loose. My father pretended that he knew everything about being gay. And all I can tell you was the next 18 months to 2 years of my life were a nightmare living at home. I don't think they ultimately cared, quite frankly. And I think they were concerned for me rather than them. But I will say they were concerned because we were living in a small town, fishing village, and they were concerned that the gossip would be all over the town, even though there were openly gay people in the town. And I didn't have my first sexual experience with another person till I was 21.
Oh, okay. So you're 22, you basically been outed to your family. It's time to get on with your life. And you decided when you were 26 years old to move and come over from Dublin, Ireland to move to Vancouver, Canada.
Correct. I had spent 2 or 3 years in that period of time living in Dublin with a person, another guy, and that fell apart dramatically, and I had to come back home. And I'd been to Canada, I'd been to the United States a couple of times, I'd been to Europe many, many times because it was literally, a 12-hour journey to Europe on the ferry. And I just decided it was time. And we had an unemployment rate in Ireland at 28%. Now, I was employed, but we had an unemployment rate of 28%. And Australia, the United States, and Canada opened immigration to Ireland based on a certain set of criteria. So I applied to Canada because I figured, having been in Vancouver a couple of times, and I loved how liberal Canada came across to be, and that nobody seemed to give a damn in the West End of Vancouver who or what you are. I decided to throw all my eggs in one basket and go with Canada. So I had met guys, and I was long distance dating this guy, and he ended up being my support network to get into Canada. So not only did I move to Canada, but I moved to Canada with the government knowing I was moving there as a gay man, which gave me so much validity at 26 years of age that I knew that's where I needed to be.
So moving to Canada, moving to a new space, a new place, what did you find yourself doing for like work and fun?
Oh, well, fun we won't want to get into because it's XXX rated. You basically let a young Irish guy at 26 years of age out in a free world, and they go off and they experience everything they want to do. One of the conditions of moving to Canada at the time was you had to have a certain amount of money in cash when you were at the airport for immigration. Should get you through the first 3 to 4 months of living there without working. You were also in absolutely told that you could not access any social welfare benefits in any description. You had to have your own Medicare, all of that sort of stuff. So I played along with it. I arrived December 31st, 1986. I figured, why not start a new year? And I then started to look for work because I guess my money was running out and I couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. So I went into telemarketing, and it was quite intense. And I stuck with that till 2003.
So I want to go back to something that you had said about having enough cash to last you 3 months and 3 or 4 months without getting a job. And they check that at your immigration. That's a very interesting thing. Why is it that they do that?
Well, I'm going to do what they did for me. The condition was that you had to be self-sufficient. Moving to Canada, and I think your immigration rules down south are a lot more stringent than ours certainly are now. But they determined that $1,500 cash that you could produce when you arrived in Vancouver or at the border that they determined was enough for you if you were residing with somebody else to be self-sufficient for X period of time. I was also told by the embassy in Dublin that we absolutely had no right to seek any social assistance whatsoever. So I did it. To find out when I had to go on social assistance 4 or 5 years later, I wasn't in the records. They didn't know I was in the country. And why didn't I apply when I got there? So, yeah, I found it to be very interesting, but it wasn't that difficult for me to raise that money because I quit my job, full-time job, a year and a half before I left Ireland and started to work in the pubs, pulling Guinness, and I loved bartending. And I mean, I'm a person to person. So it was really cool not to have to get up and go into the office every day and just pull pints and learn how to pull Guinness and work for the fisherman. And that was my butch moment, right?
So you got there in 1986 and something happened with you in 1989. And I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about that.
Well, in 1980, I got here in 86. I was fully aware of HIV and AIDS. In fact, I was concerned that back in Ireland, I had it. And because it had only been breaking in Ireland at that point in time, and it wasn't called HIV and it wasn't called AIDS, it was called the gay plague, or you were outed because you were gay. So I had been dating somebody. Actually living with somebody for a couple of years, and they sort of got sick. And I just decided after they had been in the hospital for a long time, and went from a muscle bear to a skeleton. Something was wrong, and we had been having unsafe sex. So I went and got tested in March of 1989. I was diagnosed positive for HIV. It was crushing.
Now, in that time back in 1989, when it was in a small way relatively still new, did you jump right onto the cocktails and getting the medicine, or did you wait just a little while?
There was no cocktail back in 1989. You lived in fear because as you were walking around the streets of the West End, you were seeing people with markings on their face. You were seeing people walking around like skeletons. And it was almost like they were living in a leper's island. Nobody would talk to them. And then there was all this paranoia coming out of the right-wing government of the United States at the time that this was a gay disease and gays were, whatever. It's no different than much of what happens today. I didn't get on any medication until 1993. And the medication I was put on in 1993 was AZT. And I didn't realize, but AZT actually did more bad for people with HIV than it did good. And I was on 18 pills a day of AZT. And not only was it DNA altering, it was mind altering, and it was basically killing everything that one had. I mean, you could poison your organs. It certainly played with the brain. It sent you psychotic. So I was on AZT, for about 4 or 5 years, or 3 years, until they came up with the Kaletra, which was mashed with AZT. And then shortly after that, they had a 3-pill cocktail.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, and you can correct me, wasn't AZT a cancer medication?
I don't know what AZT was, to be honest with you. I thought it was primarily developed for HIV. But what it did was it ultimately ended up giving many, many people pancreatic cancer.
Oh, wow.
It was a cancer-causing drug for some people. It was a psychotic-causing drug for people like me. My ex-partner died of AZT poisoning and ended up having cancer of the pancreas. That's what the primary cause of too much AZT was, pancreatic cancer. And back in those days, I don't think a gay person with cancer was relevant to the health system. And certainly a gay person with pancreatic cancer wasn't going to have anything done to help them other than keep them, painless or whatever. It was horrible. It was actually really, really horrible to live. Well, I'm sure it was earlier than that, but from my experience, 1986 to mid-90s was probably a reckoning with reality that a 20, 30-year person could handle.
Well, being 1989, being the year that you got diagnosed with HIV and going through all the steps to get yourself together, which, like you said, 1993, you went on medicine, but you still lived your life. And let's talk about you doing. If I'm not mistaken, is it Puget Sound, Mr. Leather?
Puget Sound, Mr.
Puget
Leather.
Sound, Mr. Leather. Okay.
Yes, it's an area of the Northwest that encompasses Tacoma and Seattle. So the purpose of the Puget Sound Mr. Leather contest, which was run then by the Imperial Court of Tacoma, was to raise money to grant the dying wishes of people living with HIV, or AIDS, as it was called back then. So basically, if you had a death sentence and your family was not available, or like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, if you had this last thing that you wanted to do, the job of the Puget Sound Mr. Leather was to raise funds to enable those dreams and wishes to come true.
So then after
as long
that,
also as playing with the leather community, which was quite fun.
so after that, you decided to run for Mr. Gay Vancouver.
Yep, I did. I had run for King of Hearts a couple of times in Vancouver. To me, you know, I'd never known about the drag world before, other than Danny LaRue in Ireland, who was a professional drag queen, who ended up playing in My Fair Lady in London later in life. But I was never aware of the drag community or the fundraising power of the drag community. And to me, if I could not live a public life and affect change by myself, why didn't I just blend into the one organization where I knew I could help? And I was HIV positive. I could talk to HIV. I was a gay cis male. Back then, cis wasn't in play. I was a gay male. I could talk to being a gay male with HIV. And it was a platform to fundraise and educate, basically. And I'm one that has never been secretive with my health since HIV. Because to me, if people understand what somebody is going through, then the gossip does not blow up all over the place.
Exactly.
So yes, I used it as a platform. I used it as a platform to raise money. And ironically, you know, here we are talking about 1991. Mariah was Empress in Vancouver at the same time. And both of us ended up working together, her as Empress and me as Mr. Gay Vancouver, to raise money for AIDS in the city and raise awareness for AIDS in the city. And also to send Joe Average to meet Princess. Joe Average is a painter, an artist who has focused his life work on doing Picasso-style paintings. I know that's probably not the right thing, about the AIDS life and AIDS crisis. And he got the opportunity to meet Princess Diana in Rideau Hall at a state banquet, and he couldn't afford to go. So we raised the money in 3 fundraisers to get him there and get him back and pay for his trip while he was there. So it was a powerful thing that we did. And ironically, 20 whatever years later, here we were reigning as Emperor and Empress in Surrey together. I know you didn't want to go there, but I'm just trying to put it all in context.
Yeah. So 10 years have passed, and since you moved to Vancouver, in 1996, you decided to move to Surrey, which is a suburb of Vancouver. What brought you to that decision?
Okay, so before Surrey, we moved to New West. I met this guy, my now partner for, I don't know, 24, 25 years, 1996, whatever, 24. We met in 1995. We moved in together in 96. He lived in New Westminster. He used to work on the other side of Vancouver. And then his business, his employment, moved to Langley, which is right down the street from where we are now. So rather than crossing bridges and spending all this time getting to and from work, we decided to move to Surrey. So in 1996, in October, I believe it was, we moved to Surrey. At that point in time, Surrey was just like a major rural area with some urban centers just dished around it. It was agricultural land for the most part. So that's the reason we moved. And so, and then of course, you know, my life starts to unfurl.
So as I was reading, Surrey didn't really have any LGBTQ community there at the time that you moved there. And you were probably one of the first people to ever do a GLBTQ fundraiser in that city.
That would be correct. So we moved into this townhouse estate, and, you know, having spent the last whatever amount of years it was in public life downtown in Vancouver with people all around you, I felt very alone, if that makes sense. And there was nothing out there for Surrey for gay people to do. It was also a very threatening city at the time to live in, because you could not safely be out. And again, I go back to not being the butchest man. So my like flirting down the street didn't help matters. So I joined a gay bowling league in New Westminster, which is like 15, 20-minute drive away. And during one of those bowling seasons, somebody says to me something about having a gay dance in Surrey. And I thought, yeah, whatever. So you will never, ever have it. And I thought to myself, you will never tell me what I can or cannot do. So in 1998, on Valentine's Day, we had the first, no kidding, right? Plus, in the city at that point in time, the mayor who's mayor now was mayor back then. That's a complicated story. But there was a group of books that were same-sex parenting. I use the word same-sex parenting specifically because they talked about families raising children, and we had a lot of East Indians living in the city, so their maternal line raises the family while the husbands are out working. One of the books was called My Two Dads. Well, I can tell you right now, the school board went in arms. The right-wing aspect was a very Christian, I use the term Christian, community out here. So they were trying to ban the books from the schools. So James Chamberlain, who was then a teacher, took this to the Supreme Court. So during that process, we had the first gay dance. And I thought, well, how better to elevate the gay community and fundraising as I knew it than to hold the first openly gay dance in Surrey as a fundraiser for the biggest banned books defense fund. So we raised $1,200 over and above our costs, which we donated to that fund.
Okay.
And thankfully, the Supreme Court decided that the books were not to be banned and they were to be in schools. So that's the history of Dance One.
You also went on to have the first Surrey Pride event that raised over $2,500 for AIDS Tijuana.
That will be correct. So, my connection with AIDS Tijuana. Judy Jive was Empress of Vancouver. She was traveling a lot. She wanted to go to San Diego and present big money to AIDS Tijuana. So I hosted an event for her while she was out of town in Vancouver and raised $5,000. So we went to San Diego the year that Judy was, I think that was 1995. My brain is farting. Anyway, so Judy Jive 25, we went to San Diego, we presented the $5,000. The following year, we had our first Pride. And I'm thinking, what do we do? How do we, once again, using my fundraising thoughts and abilities. So we raised $2,500 at the event. It was then matched by somebody else to the tune of $2,500. So I ended up that year in 1999 coming to San Diego with another $5,000 because I've been to Tijuana many, many times. And I've witnessed, again, my privilege living in a country that has free healthcare. When I go to my doctor's office, I have air conditioning. I have computer access. I have full access to healthcare. I went to the Tijuana clinic way back when it was in the back street somewhere, and how horrific it was to walk up a flight of stairs. It was 100 and something outside. They had fans inside and no working fridges to maintain the medication that was supposed to be given to the people with HIV. So that absolutely horrified me no end. I thought, how can we be doing what we're doing in the United States and Canada specifically, and not be concerned about eradicating it in Mexico and not looking after the people of Mexico? So that's when I figured that using whatever branding I had at the time, it was very, very important for me to not only look after at home, but to make sure that annually money went to AIDS Tijuana in Tijuana.
So let's start on this journey. We all know where I'm going right now. When did you get involved with the Imperial Court?
My first introduction to the Imperial Court was 1989.
Oh, wow.
My first ever coronation was Portland, Oregon. And I remember that because I believe it was when Peacock stepped down. I'm not sure, but it was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. That was my first introduction to it. And then when I was in Vancouver, I sort of sidelined on it. And my buddies that I met with were not interested in the court. They thought it was all artsy fartsy and the drag queens were horrible people and whatever. But I still I love the entertainment. And there were certain people in Vancouver at the time who were brilliant impersonators. And to me, the art of impersonation, if you can go in there without drugs and alcohol and see somebody like Cher on the stage, and that's supposedly a man, or see somebody like Patti LaBelle on the stage, and that's also a man. I mean, I did theater, so this was just amazing to me. So
Right.
my first direct involvement with the court was going to Portland. Then I ran for King, Queen of Hearts in Vancouver a couple of times, lost, and ran for Mr. Gay, won. Ran for Emperor twice in Vancouver back-to-back and lost. And then, of course, moved out to Surrey where there was no court. So I don't know what your question specifically is. Is it about my involvement in Surrey?
Before you go any further,
go ahead.
We are going to go ahead and take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Martin and his journey of starting a court in Surrey, BC. We will be right back.
Darling, welcome to Lips, the ultimate in drag dining.
We serve up dinner and Vegas-style drag shows 6 nights a week.
We have show-stopping entertainment, and the entertainment never stops.
Lips is the ultimate party place. Whether it's your birthday or bachelorette party, we can make your day fabulous.
So call for your reservation today, darlings, and we'll see you soon.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I just want to let you guys know that Lips here in San Diego will be opening back up on July the 10th, which is actually in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today. So hopefully you guys can go out and join them and get them back up and back out. Also, would just like to remind you that if you are enjoying what you see, please, you can donate to the Imperial Court of San Diego at imperialcourtsandiego.com. All right, let's go ahead and bring our guest right back in, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome back one more time, community activist and Emperor 1, 7, and 15 of Surrey, BC. Welcome, Martin Rooney. Welcome back.
Cheers. It's not tea, it's wine, but that's okay.
Hey, nothing wrong with it. I'm drinking water.
Absolutely.
So,
that's bad.
Yes, let's get right back into what we were talking about and talk about you in your journey and starting a court in Surrey, BC.
So I think it was around my 5 or 10 year anniversary as Mr. Gay when we've been doing the dances and the prides, and someone came and asked what I was and could we do them in Surrey, and I thought no, I'm in Surrey. I don't need to be involved in any of this whatsoever. I know the dark side behind the curtain of this whole environment, and was I willing to put other people out there. So I believe it was 2000 that we held our first Mr. and Miss Gay Surrey pageant, which was an absolute nightmare for politically. How dare we did their thing. Mr. and Miss Gay did their thing. The next Miss Gay did their thing. And all of a sudden, the second Mr. and Miss Gay went out on the circus, Scott and Anya. And they discovered these fabulous crowns and all about emperor and empresses and blah, blah, blah. And they loved it. And as gays, they were becoming more friendly with monarchs, which tends to be the case in a lot of places. and came back and said, can we form a court? And my immediate response was, I don't know how we do this. But to cut it all short, Vancouver had put itself, instead of the province, back into the city of Vancouver as a court. So that enabled us to make the application to become an independent sovereign court in our realm, because Vancouver wasn't serving Surrey or the regions around it. So we applied and we got barony status, and we followed what we needed to do. And 3 years later, I believe 2004, we were given imperial sovereign court status. Hi, Nicole, by the way, just saying.
Well, and then you were elected the first emperor of Surrey, correct?
Correct. We and the vote in favor. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, let's see. So you did an event called an event that they said you took a risk on, called Straight to Drag. Why don't we talk about that?
Okay, so when I was Emperor 1, our emperor woman called Melissa, who was married with 2 kids, she wanted to enter the breast cancer run for breast cancer. And it took $3,000 to register for that event. So we talked about it, and we talked to some of our straight neighbors about it. And I came up with the idea that all of you people have been hanging around with us for 2 or 3 years already. You enjoy coming to our events. So why don't we ask all the straight people, be they male to go female or female to go male, and we'll call it Straight to Drag, and we'll do it as a fundraiser for the breast cancer walk. So we did it. It was heavily covered by the local media. Whatever technology we had at the time, we were able to use. So while they were performing in their alter egos, their original picture was on a screen behind them. They were given 45 minutes to get into their alter ego. We had makeup artists in the back dressing room. So we raised $4,000 something in that one event, in that one night. Unfortunately, it didn't continue after that. But yeah, Straight to Drag. I think it's fabulous.
Well, why do you think it didn't continue?
There was no will to continue it. Sometimes, and you know this, and so there's many people in the court world, sometimes when something is very successful, a lot of people don't want to touch it because they can't include you in it to make it better, or have decided that is something that they don't want to do moving forward. I don't know. Well, I'm a believer in not stepping on the next reign's toes.
Oh, so that was an event that you did as part of your reign, and not just an annual event.
Yes.
Okay.
I was hoping it was good, but it wasn't, and that was good. It served its purpose. It brought a whole bunch of people into a room. We had 110 people in the room that night for 4 hours. And we rented a hotel ballroom to do this in. So after paying all of the expenses related to the event, we came out with $4,000 in profit, which completely breast cancer walk. So I thought it was incredible. I would love to have continued it, but I'm not. Well,
since we are starting,
I'm not eternal. I like to think I am.
Well, since we are talking about Straight to Drag, I have a picture here that I'm going to pop up on our screen. This is you, correct?
Where did you find that? That is me.
Yes.
I thought you want to see an empress. I'll give you an. I closed the show. I got dressed. Oh, I've had it in my closet for years. I had it in my closet for years, and I've never had an opportunity to use it. Plus, I had an AIDS ribbon underneath that, so I had somebody create a breast cancer ribbon over top of it. It's made out of cardboard, and I did Mariah Carey's Hero, which now, of course, you could not do as a white person, but I did Mariah Carey's Hero and dedicated it to all the survivors of breast cancer as the closing number of the show.
Nice. That's an awesome.
And that's the last time I've done drag.
I was gonna ask.
It is.
You couldn't take the heels.
You scare me with the amount of background work you do, girl. Well, I can't. But I just, there's something about, for me, being in drag, that as soon as that performance was over, I went into the dressing room and got right out of it. Also, that night, I shaved my head. And all of the money for shaving my head went towards the fundraiser too. So I have been shaved since that 2004.
Nice. So why don't you talk about all the stuff?
I figured if I had to take it off, I may as well make money out of it.
Right. Why don't we talk about, if you can just give us a synopsis and all the stuff that you did as emperor. You're the first emperor, the year you ran the first time.
Well, what I tried to do was set an example, because I had, at that point in time, the most experience in court world that I had. I was also pretty well known on the circuit. Jose had crowned me Emperor 1, and Jose came back to the step down and did 30 minutes live performance for us at the step down, putting the whole schedule completely out of whack. I'm one of the few people in Canada, I believe, that Jose crowned. But I had a network of people throughout the international court system at the time. Plus, I was very good friends with Ted, and I have a lot of respect for the fact that Ted and Jose are actually the two people that created the international court system, because without Canada, you don't have an international court system.
Right.
And so, to me, my whole thing, bring a spotlight to my baby, and to offer the people in our court and community the ability to experience something that I believe is something you live with for the rest of your life when you reign in any capacity. So long as your passion and commitment is there, there was a red carpet for anybody that followed. And I never disrespected that red carpet. And a further conversation will lead into what we're talking about when we get to 2007. But to me, I enjoyed it. I enjoy the spotlight. Yes, you have to have an ego to be any title holder or to get on a microphone in any capacity and raise money. I do have an ego, as you probably know. So my whole purpose was, again, to be the teacher, and give the people who needed the opportunity to express themselves, and to prove to people that, yes, a city that's a small port city survive and still do good. We're still, this day, the only LGBTQ nonprofit that raises money specifically for charity in this city. And as long as that's the thing that we do, regardless of whether we have reigning monarchs or not, we are relevant in this community.
Now let's talk about, you decided to get involved in politics there in Surrey, Surrey. Why don't you take us on that journey?
Okay, so I had experience in 2007, 2008 with the media, with the travel ban. So if we want to talk about that, we can talk. If not, I'll jump to 2014. So,
okay, yeah. Well, then let's.
There was a situation in Surrey where we had asked multiple times to have the Pride.
Well, let's talk about the travel ban first.
Go ahead. Okay, so in 2007, Remembrance Day up here, I think it's November the 11th, whatever, Veterans Day in the United States. We decided to go across the border because the Canadian dollar was stronger than the American dollar. And I celebrate Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving every year. And turkeys up here are expensive. So with the exchange rate, I can get a turkey for 15 cents a pound across the border. So we left. I drove my partner's truck. He was in it. And to the border, 2 hours later, get to a booth. I have a disabled parking pass on the vehicle. So he asked what disability was. Well, I can't claim that my arm or my leg or whatever. So I told him it was HIV. Well, that proceeded to being taken in, photographed, printed, run through the FBI most wanted list and sent back to Canada and told never to enter the United States again.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, all because I'm HIV positive. Yeah, no kidding. So this guy at the border made an assumption that I was going to go to a mall and tap my shoes under a stall and suck somebody's cock or whatever that senator in Minnesota did at the time, which I thought was a very unfair judgment for him to make. So anyways, following that, remember, I'm from Ireland. I called one of our local provincial network televisions, and they interviewed me 36 hours later in my basement. And the interviewer advised me, did you know that if you get on a plane to go to Europe and a 9/11 style incident happens in the plane laboratory, do you also realize that you can't go to Australia because you got to land in the US territory before getting there? Do you also realize you can no longer go on a cruise? All of this stuff became real to me.
Wow.
So that was pretty scary because the then president of the ICC didn't believe, or somebody fed information that I was making this up. Well, who the hell would make this up? So I got a hold of Nicole the Great. I got a hold of local politicians here. I got a hold of the Washington State Governor's Office. I got a hold of our provincial politicians and some of our federal politicians. And I was told not to go public with this by powers that be in Vancouver because they were working with this under the table and this would only be a matter of time. Well, I didn't have time. If anything happened to my mom at home, I couldn't go back to Ireland. So you know what? What have I got to lose? I can't get into the US again. This is my truth. There is proof of it. So we went public with it. So in 2008, at Vancouver's coronation, it was happened to be St. Patrick's Day. On the Sunday morning, we held a rally at the Art Gallery with federal, provincial politicians, Nicole the Great, Vancouver Monarchs, and ICC people who attended that rally. It was covered by television. In 2009, I did another one. And then we called for International Day of Action, where on August the 29th of 2009, we held a rally at the Peace Arch, which is like right behind me. And we had a band, we had speakers, we had media, and we asked all people across the world, because there was a human health services, whatever you call your U.S. health thing, there was a questionnaire out about lifting the travel ban. So I had multiple countries, starting in South Africa, Switzerland, Australia, Paris, Brazil, all these places all petitioned the DHS to lift the travel ban on this day that we had this event. Simultaneously with the event in Surrey was an East Coast event in Buffalo, New York. So, end of story. December 4, 2010, the ban was lifted. First person to cross the border, legitimately living with HIV and AIDS, and I had the White House to say I could cross the border. So that's that history. And I know the impact it's made, because even talking about it gives me goosebumps. That was a day that changed the world for millions and millions and millions of people. And I wasn't the only person that did it. But I take pride in the fact that I was part of affecting that change.
Well, let me ask you this. When and did that travel ban, has it always been there, or was it something that they just came up with?
Okay, so here's the truth. It's going to hurt a lot of people listening, or if people listen afterwards. It was implemented in the Reagan years. And then President Clinton in 1993 needed to get some economic bill passed through Congress, and the ban was tagged along with it. So it was clearly effective in 1993 under the Clinton administration. I'm not blaming the Clinton administration because you guys have to barter shit down there. So I guess they figured it was worth it to get the economic passed and tag this on. But the whole thing about this was that the World AIDS Conference was never, ever held in the United States until 2010 or 2011, because no people were allowed into the United States that were HIV positive. And a lot of the American people don't know that. A lot of our gay community was not aware of that. And this whole experience taught me so much about honesty, about publicity, about media, and generally just about life. And did it scare me? Absolutely it did. I'm putting my partner on risk. I'm putting my community at risk. I'm putting myself at risk. And God knows there was a lot of hate mail. But what's important in all of this is equality, social justice, which we're living in today, and the right of people to travel who are on medication. Because if you're living with HIV, you have a responsibility to not infect. It's something like COVID. And I wish that more people in the world would understand that if a mask, and I have a couple here, but if a mask protects you, then why is it political to wear it? If a condom protects you, why is it political to use it?
No, I agree. I completely.
Now I'm off my soapbox.
So now let's talk about you. It's 2010. The travel ban has been lifted, and now you have been appointed as a member of the ICC.
Well, without divulging private conversations, there was a lot of respect for me for what I achieved in the rally to remove the travel ban. And I admire Nicole the Great's advocacy. I don't necessarily agree with everything she does, but I admire her advocacy. And she clearly admired mine. And I had skills that she felt could be brought to the international court system. And I was willing to do it because to me, that was in my court world, the ultimate, at that moment in time, validation of who I was playing court. So I joined it. My first, and we all know where that went. But that was my first event coming out and as a member of council. And I always believed that the red robe didn't define who one was. It was a symbol that you should be open and available to people to talk with, and that it wasn't that you were elevated and had your nose stuck in the air, because that was my perception of the red robe prior to getting it. I hope I never, ever, while wearing it, gave that impression, because that's not who I am. But I think it's a very effective tool to be a part of, particularly from a Canadian perspective. Because again, I will say to you and your audience, we're not international without Canada, Mexico. We're certainly not international without Canada being involved.
Right.
And if it wasn't for Ted North, we wouldn't have Canada. If it wasn't for Ted North, there would be no international court system. So to me, it was very important to defend Canada or advance Canada's agenda in all of this, because clearly we're two totally different countries with two totally different social structures.
Correct.
And we've got free healthcare, we've got gay marriage, we've got trans rights, we've got all of these things enshrined in our bill, our system of government. So to me, it was to bring Canada to the table and basically share with American citizens that there is a way forward, and albeit that you go, oh, Canada, we still have our struggles inside of our country. But we are a world leader as far as gay rights and trans rights and all that's concerned. Anyway, I digress. Sorry.
So 2014.
Maybe I should have another hit of wine.
So 2014, you decided to run for city council. Take us on that journey.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was a very interesting journey. I was set up to request for the third time the pride flag be raised on the flagpoles in Surrey at City Hall, and I didn't realize at the beginning it was a setup. So I asked in 2014 was the Russian Olympics, Sochi, right? So we made a request to City Council to fly the flag, and my request is on YouTube and it's on Facebook. It was a very positive request, stating that the pride flag was similar to the Olympic flag in that it embraced diversity throughout the world, and it was recognized in equality. And if you flew the Olympic flag in 2010 on our flagpoles, there's no reason you couldn't fly the pride flag. It got shot down 2 weeks later, and it exposed to me how the council and our city was working. So they tried to tag me as a one item candidate. However, they didn't realize I lived in the city for almost 20 years, and I knew about deforestation. I knew about genocide. I knew about forestal genocide. I knew about the politics of the police. I knew about wherever. I lived in the heart of downtown that was being gentrified. So I made a run as an independent. And no, I didn't win, but I got 7% of the vote for someone who was relatively unknown. And as a gay male, the first openly gay person to run for office in my city, I think I did pretty well.
So 2017 comes around, and tell us about the Red Ribbon for Life campaign.
Oh, that happened in 2008. So during the travel ban thing, I started something called Red Ribbons for Life, because I was able to influence City Hall to proclaim a World AIDS Day Awareness Week, or a AIDS Awareness Week around World AIDS Day. So in 2008, we did it in a little coffee shop, and I called it Red Ribbons for Life, and we raised, I don't know, $2,500. And it went from there, and then year 5, we raised $5,000 in one night. And I was told to either shit or get off the pot, excuse my language. So we upped the ante and went to a theater. And we raised, I don't know, 10 grand that night. So wow. That's how Red Ribbons for Life started. It was an amazing campaign of fundraising, of education. The majority of attendees at the theater were straight or bi. Well, I don't know. I don't need to know the identity sexual of these people. And the campaign from 2008 to 2017-18 raised close to $100,000 for HIV AIDS benefits, or AIDS groups here in Surrey, specifically the HIV Food Bank. And also some of that money was donated to San Diego for AIDS Tijuana projects in Tijuana. So I've always believed that if you can help a home and you look after your home, then there's no reason you can't spread it out. So it was an amazing, the last 5 years of it became inviting people to perform who could impersonate or put on a Las Vegas style, group number. So it was a great experience. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It was a great experience, and it showcased a lot of Vancouver and the Lower Mainland's entertainers, and they came to the table every year. And the last time we did it, we raised $20,000. We had Gilead, we had AbbVie, we had all of the HIV companies manufacturing the drugs play into it. And my doctor, my specialist, Brian Conway, is one of the top specialists in Canada on HIV and Hep C. The reason that we ended it was that on the West Coast, particularly in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, for the general community, HIV is no longer primary. Hep C has become more of a concern. So the focus has been transitioning to Hep C. So that journey, it's not my story. And if the money wasn't going to be raised for HIV related issues, then it was time for me to let it go. So the last one was held in, 2017, 2018. And I don't regret it. It was a great run. It was an amazing thing. I still raise money, as you well know, for marijuana, AIDS, and if it became absolutely necessary, we would emergency fundraise here in Surrey for the food bank.
So one of the things that I know that you were working on, or possibly still, is getting the first rainbow crosswalk in the city of Surrey. Now, did that ever happen, or is it still something that's being worked on?
It happened.
Yay.
It happened. Don't know the exact year, but oh yeah, totally. I actually had the then mayor. Actually, it was ironic how this all happened. So I'm meeting with the mayor in her office at City Hall, and we're sitting having a conversation. And the mayor was Linda Hepner at the time, and she says to me, "How the hell do I get a rainbow crosswalk in my city? I saw the one in New Westminster last week, and they're just so colorful." I said, "Madam, you're the mayor. There's no reason why I can't do it." So she thought about it, and she came back to me, and I pointed out the negative issues on the council, the way it was structured as to how. So she took her funds that she's able to distribute without council approval. Her and I met with engineering. We decided where to put the crosswalk, and it was I believe it was, where are we now? 2020? I think it might have been. I don't want to go online now to crash this system. It might have been 2017, 2018, for sure. I'm introducing Pride tomorrow on the Pride crosswalk. Yeah.
So in that same year that you talked to the mayor about getting all that, in 2018, you were awarded the Jose Honor.
Yes.
And
do you want me to comment on that?
Oh yeah,
comment on that?
Yeah.
I've always believed since the first Jose Honor I attended was in Vancouver at Judy Jive Step Down, and I thought it was so glamorous. Jose was still alive at that point. I thought it was incredible. I thought an honor that I always, I don't like awards and honors. I mean, yeah, you take them when they come, but you don't do this work to get them. But to be able to receive the Jose Honor when Jose has crowned you, and you've had some really fun times with Jose. I mean, naughty times, fun times, whatever. I maintained, regardless of the robe, regardless of being president of the ICC, that honor was everything that one works to deserve while working in the international court system, with advocacy and with fundraising and with leadership skills and all the rest of it. I've loved Jose. I respected her. I got on great with her. So, and particularly when it was the bust, because in 2016, we held the honors in Vancouver, and the bust wasn't available to those recipients at the time. So to come back to Sacramento 2 years later and to be given it in Sacramento, where, by the way, was the very same place that we received our imperial court status back in 2003-04, was just, the whole circle.
Nice. So let's talk about 2019. You decided to run for emperor again, and you were elected Emperor 15. You decided to run.
So interesting. No, I wasn't. Well, it wasn't a public election because there was only me and Mariah running. So if I was ever going to do it again, I would only do it if I had the opportunity to reign with somebody who I absolutely adore and respected, who was living in our realm, who is the most awesome entertainer, the most incredible fundraiser, and could do it with the same headspace that we were doing it from. We also decided that if we were going to do it, we were going to dedicate it to Ted North and Jose and their impact on the court system and their belief in how the courts did their thing. We also adopted the maple leaf as our symbol, because being president of the ICC for the 50th, I got the Canada crown made. And so we're the maple leaf monarchs. And the reason I did it was the opportunity, and this was purely selfish. I knew that our brand could raise a ton of money and awareness. I knew that our brand would be powerhouse. And I don't mean that from a personal perspective. I mean from a perspective of ability to get shit done. And I don't regret it. We are going to step aside because of this COVID scenario shortly, because realistically in our province, there is no way that we can guarantee a coronation next May, because we cannot host large public events until phase 4, which is vaccine. I don't see a vaccine happening before that. But yeah, in 7, I did it because we were falling apart. In 15, I did it purely for the purposes of sharing it with somebody that I absolutely respected as a friend, as a performer, as an advocate, as an activist, and the knowledge of the Imperial International Court system.
And now you were just proclaimed King Father for Life of the Western Provinces of Canada by Queen Mother Nicole and King Father Terry.
And that was a surprise to me. Obviously, there was conversation prior to it. Canada's completely different. And I share Canada with John Ripson on the East, because he's the Eastern Provinces of Canada. And we were proclaimed this because of our 30 plus years of commitment to court, community, advocacy, and fundraising. It has been accepted, I believe, extremely positively. It is an absolute honor. And it's up to us as to what we do with it. We want to have the Canadian courts embrace it, and to give the Canadian Courts an opportunity to use a united voice through John and myself. And we're hoping that's going to be in play in the next couple of weeks. After all, Canada Day is, I think, Wednesday. So we're leaving Canada Day to happen, and then we've reached out to some of the Canadian courts. And you know, I think Canada is a very important partner in the international court system or council or whatever, because we don't have the same level of vitriol in our politics that you guys have.
Right.
In the States. We have a leader that, albeit people don't like him for whatever reason, has been a steady captain during this crisis. You know, he paid our people to stay home through a program called CERB. Every Canadian that could not work legitimately got $2,000 a month for staying home.
Wow.
And it has been extended now through September. So we have a completely different way of looking at stuff up here. And even though the struggle is real for many Canadians, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. We are more perfect than what's happening in your country. And it breaks my heart every day I turn on the news to see the next fuck up that happened and then the next level of disrespect that goes on. And this is the one thing I'll do right now, and I know you weren't ready for this. I make a plea to every American to not only register to vote, but to actually go out and vote on November the 3rd. Because no matter how bad you may think another candidate is, re-electing Donald Trump is a huge mistake for your country. It's a huge mistake for our hemisphere, and it's a huge error for the rest of the world. We can't vote in your election. I'm not saying Joe Biden is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but don't make the same mistakes as 2016.
Right. Okay, so we are going to wind this down, and I'm gonna real quick before we get to the last part of our show here. I want to ask you one question. What have you and your husband been doing during this quarantine?
Well, actually, both of us are in vulnerable population. For multiple reasons. Basically, we've been hunkering down in our home. We've got 3 German Shepherds in our house. We're fortunate enough to live in a 2-story house, like a monster house, in the heart of the city with a backyard that's almost like if you go out my backyard, you go camping. So we've just been hanging out at home and watching Netflix and Prime and getting irritated every morning that we turn on the TV and have, political conversations, whatever. No, we're smart. We both have masks. We do go out for dinner the odd time, but we only go out to places that we know are safe. 2 years into a relationship, if you can't be on upper and lower parts of a house, there's something wrong, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so now we've come to a part of our show where first I'm going to ask you to talk about an event that's coming up for you guys tomorrow. I'm going to pop the picture up and you can just tell us a little bit about it, okay?
Yep. Surrey Pride 2020. So, we had the most awesome Pride in our last year. We moved it into the heart of downtown. We had 3,000 people in the plaza for most of the 7 hours that we were there. We had 150 booths or 100 plus booths on the avenue in front of the plaza. So we were hoping to harness the energy from last year and move this whole thing forward. Unfortunately, as you all know, due to COVID, many large events have been canceled across North America. So we found this out in February, March, and we immediately jumped to, do we do it, do we not? So tomorrow, 3 p.m., we have worked with a professional team of digital productions, and we are presenting to you the 21st annual Surrey Pride Festival on our Surrey Pride Facebook page, not the day, to watch the live stream. It will start at 2:45. Pride will be at 3 o'clock. It's approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Set of entertainers, an amazing positive response from politicians and community leaders. So yeah, come join us, Pride 21 tomorrow. We're the first large Canadian city to produce it in digital and virtual formats. So please, please, please build the audience up. Come join us. Self-promotion.
All right. All right. So now we're at the point where we're at a point in the show, which I like to call picture association. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up some pictures, and what I want you to do is just tell me who's in the picture, where the picture was taken, and what the person in the picture means to you. Okay? And here we go.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us who that is?
Oh, that is me and Mariah Lenoir on the night that we were crowned Emperor and Empress 15 here in Surrey, May of 2019. This was after both of our performance numbers prior to being crowned. As you can see, we were matching in sort of outfits, and her hair is fabulous, but you should see the crowning hair. They couldn't put the crown on her head. It was like so big. So that's me and Mariah.
Okay, so there's that one. Here's the next one. Now you tell us about this one.
I better put my glasses. And Jose. So Jose came to Surrey in 2004, October. And this is me and her. Clearly, she's lecturing me. This was at the Out of Town show, where I actually sang One Moment in Time live, which was probably a tragedy. So she was giving me directives and orders as to how to behave as emperor when I got crowned the following night. I loved Jose when we sit down like that. She was just so real and honest.
All right, here we go. Next one.
That's not how she looked the following night. She put her face on.
How about this one?
Oh, that's me and my mommy. My mom turns 89 December the 29th of this year. She's still living in Ireland. I loved my mother. Since my father died in 93, her and I have been able to have some really close and honest conversations. That picture was taken when she was last over here, I believe. Yeah, and it was taken at the Boathouse in Westminster. I'm wearing the Aran sweater that she bought for me, and she's wearing the top that I actually bought, colorful stuff. And yeah, that's my mom. Her name is Mary, Marie. Yeah, she's 89 come this December the 29th, and yeah, love her to death.
All right. Here we go. One more. Tell us about this.
Where did you get that picture? You stole it from Facebook the other night, didn't you? So that's me and the bear, Hardy Har, as Nicole calls him. This man has, and you've met him. This man has the biggest belly laugh that is so true and so real and can't be manufactured. We're at our haunt, which we go to once a month. It's over across the street here. It's called the Social House, and I think that was last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
And yeah, so that's me and my buddy, my partner, my protector, my defender, and my sexy bear.
All right. There is one last picture that we have that I'm going to pop up on the screen. And basically, what I would like for you to do is, this is a picture of you when you were a kid. I want you to tell your young self, what would you tell your young self now?
Wow. I think I was 6 in that picture. Dude, believe in yourself. You'll have many obstacles ahead of you. And as if you can, at my age, turn to people and say, I am the sum of all of my faults, and then you will have succeeded. Never, ever let anyone take you down. Never let anyone tell you you can't do what you want to do. And believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, and you'll be an amazing human being.
All right. All right, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Like I said, you are our first Canadian guest, hopefully not our last. And we hope to have maybe you back on the show sometime later. But once again, we hope you guys celebrate Surrey Pride tomorrow with a whole lot of fun and raise a whole lot of money. But once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Regina, I want to thank you so much for inviting me. I've been watching some of your shows, and I have to tell you that the most informative things that I have seen on Facebook, and that could be a personal preference. Folks, donate to the Imperial Court of San Diego on the screen below. I said that this show tonight was hosted by San Diego as a fundraiser. I 100% support the Imperial Court San Diego, always have. I'm hoping that some of this money will be directed towards the refugees and AIDS Tijuana. It has been my absolute honor. And if all things are in play, it is my intention to visit your gorgeous city again in February. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you later, Martin. All right, everybody, that has been our show today. We hope you guys have enjoyed your time here with us. That is Martin Rooney, all the way from Surrey, BC, Canada. We also like to remind you one more time that you guys can enjoy Black Drag Magic tonight on Facebook at 7 p.m., hosted by Amber St. James and Strawberry Corn Cake. Also on Saturday, July the 11th will be San Diego's investiture. 6:30 is the pre-show. 7 o'clock starts investiture. So please join us, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you and have a great day.